Yeah, please start.
Good evening, everybody. Today we are going to discuss an interesting drug, quetiapine, and its role in neurology. It is primarily a psychiatrist's drug, but in the last few days and few months, there has been a significant increase in the use of quetiapine in neurological conditions as well. So we will be highlighting from the neurological aspect in this talk. So my name is Dr. Sonia Shivde. I work as a senior resident in St. John's Medical College Hospital in the Department of Neurology, and my area of interests are epilepsy, cognitive neurology, and neuroimmunology. So, quetiapine. Quetiapine is a second generation antipsychotic used for the treatment of schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, and major depressive disorders. It was first approved in 1997 by the US FDA, Food and Drug Administration, for the treatment of schizophrenia. Subsequently, it was approved in Europe and in other countries worldwide. Initially, the preparations were mainly used for the treatment of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, but later on, over the course, major depressive disorders, extended release formulation was given to them, and that was also FDA approved. So basically, antipsychotics are divided into two broad categories: typical antipsychotics and atypical or second generation antipsychotics. Quetiapine belongs to the class of atypical or second generation antipsychotics. So we will be discussing this drug under following headings: class of the drugs and chemical structure, mechanism of action, pharmacokinetics, indications, dosing and administration of a particular indication, adverse reactions, drug-to-drug interactions, and special considerations including selective some black box warnings, and clinical trials. Under clinical trials, I will not be discussing much detail the psychiatric clinical trials for which primarily the drug is being used, but I will highlight on few clinical trials for Parkinsonism and dementia patients and the stroke risk and all. So coming to the drug class and chemical structure, quetiapine is a dibenzothiazepine derivative with antipsychotic property. It is available as a chemical compound quetiapine fumarate. This is the chemical structure and a molecular formula of quetiapine fumarate. Mechanism of action. Now quetiapine has a multitude of complex mechanisms. It mediates its pharmacological effect mainly via 5-HT2, that is serotonergic antagonistic action. It also acts on dopaminergic D1 and D2 receptors, and quetiapine also has antagonistic action on dopamine receptors. So action on various receptors. On the left side, we can see the diagram in which the quetiapine has antagonistic action on 5-HT2A, that is a serotonergic receptor, and D2 receptors, which is depicted by a red circle with a negative symbol in it. The green symbol with a positive symbol in that depicts the agonist action. So it is a partial agonist at 5-HT1A receptor. And again, it has got antagonistic action on histaminic H1 receptor and alpha-1 adrenergic receptor. One of the key properties of second generation antipsychotics is that they have a very high 5-HT2A D2 ratio. That is, it has got a higher affinity for 5-H2A serotonergic receptor than that of dopamine receptors. So because of this ratio and higher serotonergic affinity, they have less extrapyramidal syndrome related side effects because of severe dopamine receptor blocking activity. That is the advantage of quetiapine over the typical antipsychotics. Dopamine theory in schizophrenia, as we all know, that blocking of the D2 receptors in the mesocortical and mesolimbic pathways is indicated in the treatment of schizophrenia for negative as well as positive symptoms respectively. Excess of dopamine in these pathways has shown to be associated with schizophrenia. It has got a partial agonistic action against 5-HT1A receptors. So this partial agonistic activity, and in addition to that, norepinephrine transport inhibitory potential have shown some role in anxiolytic and antidepressant properties of quetiapine and its use in major depressive illnesses as well. Norquetiapine is an active metabolite of quetiapine. Both quetiapine and norquetiapine has affinity for other receptors such as histaminic receptors, other serotonergic receptors, muscarinic and adrenergic. Why I am highlighting these receptors is it will come in the next slide. So somnolence, orthostatic hypotension, and dizziness are the most common side effects of quetiapine, and these side effects can be attributed to quetiapine's action on these receptors. H1 antagonism can lead to sedative effects, somnolence, and weight gain. Alpha-1 adrenergic receptor antagonism can cause orthostatic hypotension, and muscarinic anticholinergic effects and dizziness or precipitation of delirium may occur in elderly people. Coming to the pharmacokinetics, quetiapine fumarate activity is primarily due to its parent drug. The metabolites, majority of the times they are inactive metabolites. However, norquetiapine is the only active metabolite. The mean terminal half-life of quetiapine is about 6 hours with a clinical dose range. Steady state plasma concentration are expected to be achieved within 2 days of dosing. Coming to the absorption, it is rapidly absorbed after oral administration. Peak plasma concentration is achieved within 1.5 hours. The tablet formulation is 100% bioavailable relative to solution. The bioavailability of quetiapine is marginally affected by administration with food, so it can be taken with or without food. Coming to distribution, widely distributed throughout the body with a volume of distribution around 10 liter per kg. It is 83% bound to plasma proteins at therapeutic concentration. Coming to metabolism and elimination, quetiapine is highly metabolized in human body with just less than 1% of the administered dose exchange unchanged in urine. It is extensively metabolized by liver via cytochrome P450 enzyme pathway, predominantly P450-3A4 enzyme. It is predominantly metabolized by sulfoxidation and oxidation, and the metabolites produced are inactive and excreted in urine. Thus, P450 enzyme 3,4 inhibitors, when we are using co-administering with quetiapine, we should sort for the caution. But otherwise, regular cytochrome P450 enzyme system does not inhibit that much the quetiapine concentrations and all. Special considerations. Age. Oral clearance of quetiapine is reduced by 40% in elderly patients. So dose adjustments may be necessary. In elderly patients, we should start at a low dose and titrate gradually. Gender. There is no gender effect on the pharmacokinetics of quetiapine. Renal insufficiency. Patient with severe renal impairment had 25% lower mean oral clearance than that of normal subjects. However, when the plasma concentrations were compared in patients with renal insufficiency with those of normal subjects, there was no significant difference in the plasma concentrations. So dose adjustments are not required in patients with renal insufficiency, even if the creatinine clearance is less than 30 ml per minute. Hepatic impairment patients had 30% lower oral mean clearance of quetiapine than normal subjects. Since quetiapine is extensively metabolized by liver, higher plasma levels are expected in hepatically impaired population and dose adjustments may be required. Indications. So prime indications are psychiatry. The only FDA approved indications are schizophrenia, bipolar mania, bipolar depression, and maintenance therapy in bipolar disorders. Whatever indications for which we use commonly in neurology, they are all off-label indications. So off-label uses are agitation, aggression, and psychosis associated with dementia, either severe dementia or refractory to other antipsychotics or other treatments. Agitation or delirium in ICU settings. Delusional infestation and generalized anxiety disorder in adjunct to antidepressants. Again, these are pure psychiatric uses. Treatment-resistant obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and psychosis and Parkinson's disease. Dosing and administration. So dosing, quetiapine mode of administration is oral, IV preparation is not available. Two types of formulations are available, immediate release and extended release, with a wide range of tablet formulation from 25 mg to 400 mg. Administration. Immediate release tablets can be administered with or without food. However, extended release tablets will be enterically coated tablets and they should be administered without food or with a light meal of less than 300 calories, preferably in the evening hours. And swallow the tablet as whole. Do not break, crush or chew the tablet. Nasogastric, if we have to administer, it is again off-label route. So hold the tube feed for 30 minutes before administration. Flush with 25 ml of sterile water. crush dose using immediate release formulation. Do not use enteric formulations as they can cause gastric discomfort and efficacy will reduce. Only immediate release formulation to be used. Mix it with 10 ml of water and administer via nasogastric tube. Followed by 50 ml of flush of sterile water should be given. Indications and dosing. Schizophrenia adults. In adult schizophrenia on day 1 they start with 25 mg twice daily and it is increased in increments. By day 4 it can reach over to 300 to 400 mg. And maximum dose ranges, the dose range is between 150 to 750 mg per day. Other indications are bipolar mania as a monotherapy or in adjunct to lithium and divalproate sodium and bipolar depressions. And I will not go in much detail of the dosing schedules. Coming to the indications important from neurology point of view, they are agitation, aggression, and psychosis associated with dementia. Short-term adjunctive use while addressing underlying causes in patients without a clinically significant response after an adequate trial up to 4 weeks, taper and withdraw therapy. So we should not give it at a high dose and we should not consider giving it for the longer period. Only continue in patients with demonstrated benefit. If there is no benefit observed, we can taper it over after 4 weeks. If no benefit, we can taper and withdraw the therapy. Attempt to taper and withdraw at regular intervals. Even if the marginal improvement or improvement is noticed, a trial of tapering and withdrawing the drug can be given. In severe agitation associated with dementia with Lewy bodies, as synucleinopathies, especially dementia with Lewy body, it is very neuroleptic sensitive and even small doses can precipitate severe psychotic episodes or delirium. We have to be very cautious. If at all use is required, dose more than 12.5 mg per day is not recommended. Apart from that, for other dementias, it is fairly a safer drug as compared to other antipsychotics or other typical antipsychotics. So immediate release formulation oral we can start at 25 mg at bedtime. May increase dose gradually on weekly basis based on the response and tolerability. Up to 75 mg twice daily can be given. For agitation and delirium in ICU settings, non-pharmacological interventions and treatment of underlying conditions are initial steps to prevent the management of delirium in ICU settings. Look for the infection, dyselectrolytemias, hyperglycemia. So all these non-pharmacological other interventions should be treated first. And antipsychotics can be used as short-term adjunctive treatment if the symptoms are very distressing. Immediate release, if patient is in ICU on nasogastric infusion, we can give via in a nasogastric tube. Initially, we can start with a higher dose, 50 mg twice daily. Some studies say that it can be started at so higher dose, 50 mg twice daily, maybe increase in 100 mg increments, depending on tolerability at interval of more than 1 per day. Do not increase the dose of 100 mg for within a day. Maximum dose can be achieved as 400 mg per day, which looks a little on the higher side. But for more sensitive patients, some experts prefer to go slowly. So start at 25 to 50 mg daily at bedtime or 2.5 mg BD dose and increasing the doses more gradually, especially on weekly basis, weekly increment of 25 to 50 mg. Gradual increments they can do. So there are two schools of thoughts. Coming to psychosis and Parkinson's disease, which is also an off-label use. Immediate release formulations, initially we can start with low dose 12.5 to 25 mg at bedtime. Dose can be gradually increased based on response and tolerability in increments of 12.5 to 25 mg every 1 to 2 weeks. Average dose in studies has ranged from 40 to 185 mg per day. Some experts gradually increase the dose only at a bedtime and increase dose based on response and tolerability up to 100 mg at bedtime. Once that dose is achieved 100 mg and still the drug is required, then they add the morning dose if needed to control the symptoms. And maximum dose of 200 mg is tolerated. So depending on whether the patient has psychosis and Parkinson's disease, dose up to 200 mg can be administered. In dementia, go low and go slow protocol should be followed. Do not cross more than 75 mg PD dose. And in ICU settings, some school of thought say we can give up to 400 mg. Some school of thought say we can give up to around 200 mg. Geriatric patient, high risk, it's a high risk medication. Antipsychotics are identified in the Beers criteria as potentially inappropriate medications and ideally to be avoided, though not absolutely contraindicated, in patients 65 years and older. There are increased risk of cerebrovascular accidents and greater rate of cognitive decline and mortality in patients with dementia. Antipsychotics may be appropriate in schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, and other mental health conditions in elderly and should be given to control the symptoms because they are more safer than that of typical antipsychotics, especially these atypical antipsychotics. They can also be considered for short-term use as an antiemetic drug during chemotherapy, as we give olanzapine for chemo-induced vomiting. Quetiapine can also be considered. It should be given in lowest effective dose for shortest duration possible. Antipsychotic use in elderly can cause or aggravate syndrome of SIDH, syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion and hyponatremia. So regular monitoring of sodium should be done. Coming to adverse reactions, the most important part of the presentation. Anticholinergic effects. Generally low at usual therapeutic doses because muscarinic action binding to muscarinic receptors is poor as compared to that of dopamine and serotonergic receptors. However, dose-dependent increase in anticholinergic activity has been observed. As we all know that elderly patients with dementia and Parkinsonism, they have these problems of constipation, urinary retention, blurred vision, xerostomia, and these anticholinergic effects may be aggravated by quetiapine co-administration. Elderly patients can have new onset delirium, cognitive dysfunction, confusion, and falls. Mechanism is primarily due to active metabolite norquetiapine, which antagonizes the muscarinic receptors. Orthostatic hypotension is seen in around 18% of the patients in some studies. Quetiapine can cause orthostatic hypotension and accompanying tachycardia may happen. Syncope is reported in some of the adults, particularly observed with rapid upgradation or up titration of the drug. Falls, fractures in older adults are common because of sudden orthostatic symptoms and falls. It is mainly because of alpha-1 adrenergic receptor antagonism. Patients who are on antihypertensives, which can aggravate orthostatic hypotension, like selective alpha-1 blockers like prazosin or prazopressin or nitrate should be avoided in such cases, or we should be cautious about checking for the orthostatic intolerance. Onset is rapid, may also occur after a single dose of quetiapine. Orthostatic hypotension is most common in the first few days of initiation and following a dose increase. Risk factors underlying cardiovascular conditions, predisposing conditions like hypovolemia, dehydration, concomitant medications, antihypertensives, and tricyclic antidepressants. Increase in blood pressure in children and adolescents. Whereas hypotension is more common in elderly, children and adolescents can have increased higher values of blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure rise of more than 20 mm of Hg was reported in 15.2% of patients in some studies, and diastolic rise of more than 10 mm of Hg was reported in around 40.6% of patients taking quetiapine. Cataract. Lens changes have been observed in adults, children and adolescents during long-term treatment. The causal relationship has not been established between the occurrence of cataract and quetiapine. However, slit lamp examination at the initiation of treatment and at 6 months interval during the chronic treatment is advised, or it will be ideal. Transaminase elevation. Asymptomatic, transient and reversible elevations in serum transaminases have been reported, primarily ALT more than AST. Clinical trials documenting transaminase elevations were conducted in mainly psychiatric conditions, not in the neurological conditions. These hepatic enzyme elevations usually occurred within the first 3 weeks of drug treatment. So we should have a baseline full liver function profile, and it should they will promptly return to pre-study levels or pre-normal levels with ongoing treatment of quetiapine. So every 5 days or every weekly monitoring in the initial at least 3 weeks of drug treatment, we can monitor for the transaminase levels. Coming to the most favorite side effect of quetiapine, that is QT prolongation. Quetiapine has been associated with prolonged QT interval on ECG, including rare reports of torsades de pointes, that is association with ventricular tachyarrhythmias. This occurs predominantly in the setting of overdose and in patients with associated risk factors, cardiac or metabolic risk factors. Compared to other antipsychotics, quetiapine is generally associated with lower risk of QT prolongation actually. So here I will like to take 5 minutes, as we always have this question in mind, how much is the QT prolonged and how we should measure it and what things we should keep in mind. So here briefly, this is the PQRS complex on ECG, and the shaded area green color is the QT interval, the time from the start of the Q wave to the end of the T wave. It represents time taken for ventricular depolarization and repolarization. At the ECG paper speed of 25 mm per second, each small square is around 40 milliseconds. That means that the normal QT interval, the shaded green area is covering around approximately 11 small squares. So 11 into 40, it comes around 450 milliseconds. So the normal QT interval is up to 440 milliseconds. Values by gender vary. So let's have a look on the right side of the slide. The normal QT values, QT interval is prolonged if it is more than 440 milliseconds in men and more than 460 milliseconds in women. QT interval, if it prolongs more than 500, it is associated with increased risk of torsades T-pointes. QT interval is abnormally short if it is less than 350 milliseconds. And a useful rule of thumb is that a normal QT is less than half of the preceding RR interval. So as you can see here, the preceding RR interval shaded in purple, the area under the green shade should be less than half as that of the area shaded in the purple. QT interval is inversely proportional to the heart rate, and QT interval shortens with faster heart rate and it lengthens with slower heart rate. How to measure QT interval on ECG? Baseline ECG record is mandatory before starting quetiapine, especially long lead 2 if we get it's good. The QT interval should be measured either in long lead 2 or V5, V6. Several successive beats should be measured with the maximum interval taken. And if there are large U waves, that is the U wave size of more than 1 mm, that are fused to the T waves, they should be included in the measurement. Like here we can see the U wave after T wave. If it's more than 1 mm large, it should be included in the QT interval timing. And if it's separate from that of the T wave and it's a smaller, it should be excluded from the calculation of QT interval. Coming to the risk factors for QT prolongation: female gender, age more than 65 years, structural heart diseases, past history of drug-induced torsades T-pointes, any genetic defects of ion channels, long QT syndromes, and baseline QT interval if it's more than 500 milliseconds, do not give quetiapine. Or if lengthening of QT is corrected QT complex is noted more than 60 milliseconds, in the successive ECG reading, do not give quetiapine. Risk factors for QT prolongation are again electrolyte disturbances, hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia. So we have a baseline electrolyte monitoring before starting quetiapine. Bradycardia, hepatic impairment, renal impairment, and polypharmacy that prolong QT intervals like quinone, antibiotics, mefloquine, chloroquine, etc., and substance abuse. Somnolence is another common adverse event seen in around 16 to 34% of people. It may cause non-adherence, impairment of physical and mental abilities. Mechanism: somnolence is believed to be due to H1 antagonism leading to potential CNS depressant effects. Quetiapine has a potential to impair judgment, thinking and motor skills, so patients should be cautious about performing activities requiring mental alertness like handling risky machineries and automobile driving. Sexual dysfunction has also been seen: decreased libido, erectile dysfunction, and priapism. Minimal hyperprolactinemia is reported because of dopamine D2 receptor antagonism. Elevation may persist during chronic administration. It may reduce pituitary gonadotropin secretion, and some galactorrhea, amenorrhea, gynecomastia impotence have been reported in patients receiving prolactin elevating compounds. But there is theory that in 1/3 of breast cancers, hyperprolactinemia is documented, or in pancreatic islets and cancers. But in clinical and epidemiological studies, it has not shown any relation between chronic administration of antipsychotics, including quetiapine, and tumorigenesis. Coming to weight gain, all atypical antipsychotics are involved in causing metabolic syndromes. So quetiapine is associated with significant weight gain, moderate propensity for weight gain. and it will occur in the initial period following the initiation of therapy, and gradually it will decrease and it will plateau. But the patient will go on gaining the weight on chronic use. Risk factors for obesity are family history, parental BMI. In children and adolescents, rapid weight gain is seen in the initial period and in schizophrenia patients because of their unhealthy lifestyles sometimes. Hyperglycemia. Glycemic abnormalities range from mild insulin resistance to frank diabetic ketoacidosis. New onset diabetes has also been observed within first 3 months to median onset of 3.9 years. Coming to dyslipidemia, hypertriglyceridemia, that is increased serum triglycerides, including cases of severe hypertriglyceridemia of more than 600 mg per dl have been documented. And they have precipitated into acute pancreatitis, though there are very sparse case reports on that. This is very rare side effect. Hypercholesterolemia, that is increased LDL and total cholesterol, decrease HDL, may also occur. Risk factors are again history of underlying dyslipidemia, and schizophrenia, they have higher cardiovascular mortality as compared to general population if they are on quetiapine and they have dyslipidemia. Metabolic disturbances, clozapine, olanzapine are more known to cause dyslipidemia and metabolic disturbances than that of quetiapine. Coming to hypothyroidism, it's a rare documented side effect. Some cases requiring discontinuation of treatment, or some cases may require thyroid replacement therapy. Here one point is important, which is concomitant lithium treatment, because lithium can induce or exacerbate pre-existing hypothyroidism. So it's better to have a baseline thyroid function before we start on quetiapine, and especially if we are using lithium concomitantly. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome. All antipsychotics are associated with neuroleptic malignant syndrome with varying frequencies. Incidence is less with second generation compared to first generation antipsychotics. There are case reports of NMS with quetiapine monotherapy. Most cases have concomitant administration of another neuroleptic or other confounding conditions, but pure NMS occurring with quetiapine monotherapy is very, very rare. It can be idiosyncratic, not dose dependent, and believed to be due to CNS dopaminergic tone disturbances, dysregulation. Onset, patient develop NMS within 2 weeks of initiation of therapy, and once the syndrome starts, the full syndrome will usually develop over 3 to 5 days. Risk factors are male gender, dehydration, catatonia, intramuscular injections, and concomitant lithium or benzodiazepine use. Extrapyramidal symptoms. Antipsychotics can cause 4 main types of extrapyramidal syndrome: acute dystonia, drug-induced Parkinsonism, akathisia, and tardive dyskinesias. EPS can also present with oropharyngeal dystonias presenting as dysphagia, esophageal dysmotility, and aspiration, which may not be recognized as EPS, but they may be very much troubling for the patient and may increase the patient morbidity of the patient. Mechanism, EPS for Parkinson's and all, it is dose related due to antagonism of dopaminergic D2 receptor in nigrostriatal pathways. Tardive dyskinesias are mainly time related. It's a delayed onset, may occur 1 to 2 years after the initiation of therapy, and result from chronic exposure to dopamine D2 receptor antagonist, leads to upregulation of these receptors over time and causing dyskinesias. Acute dystonia is rapid, may start within the first 5 days of drug initiation. Even after a single dose, it has been reported. Drug-induced Parkinsonism can happen over days to weeks. 50 to 70% of cases occur within a month, and around 90% within 3 months of treatment initiation if it has to occur. Akathisia is varied, may begin over several days and within a month in up to 50% of cases. Tardive dyskinesia symptoms occur after 1 to 2 years of continuous exposure. It is especially common in elderly female age group. Hematological malignancies. Leukopenia, neutropenia, thrombocytopenia have been rarely reported with quetiapine monotherapy, not that frequently as that of clozapine. Agranulocytosis, including fetal agranulocytosis, has also been reported rarely. TTP and autoimmune hemolytic anemias are rare case reports. Mechanism is immune mediated or direct toxicity of the drug. Drug-induced neutropenia usually manifests after 1 or 2 weeks of exposure. Agranulocytosis usually appears 3 to 4 weeks following the initiation of therapy. However, the onset may be insidious. Risk factors: if there's a past history of blood dyscrasias, past history of any drug-induced leukopenia or neutropenia, And we have to be very careful when we are concomitantly using valproate, because valproate can aggravate blood dyscrasias. Patients with neutropenia should be carefully monitored for fever and other symptoms or signs of infection and treated promptly. Patients with severe neutropenia, absolute neutrophil count less than 1000 per mmQ, we should discontinue quetiapine. Coming to drug interactions, the risk of using quetiapine in combination with other drugs is not much evaluated extensively. However, given the primary CNS action of quetiapine, it should be used cautiously with other centrally acting drugs. Drug interactions, quetiapine potentiated the cognitive and motor effects of alcohol in clinical trials in subjects with selected psychotic disorders. Alcoholic beverages should be avoided, those taking quetiapine. Quetiapine may enhance the effect of certain antihypertensive drugs, as we have already discussed, and quetiapine can antagonize the effects of levodopa and dopamine agonists. The effect of other drugs on quetiapine. Here we will discuss mainly those drugs which we use both in psychiatry as well as neurology. Co-administration of phenytoin with quetiapine increases the mean oral clearance of quetiapine by 5-fold, and dose adjustments may be required. We may have to increase the dose of quetiapine. Increased doses may be required to control psychotic symptoms when co-administered. Dose increments may be required with other hepatic enzyme inducers, strong enzyme inducers like carbamazepine, barbiturates, rifampicin, and glucocorticoids. Caution should be taken when suddenly, for some reason, we have to stop the phenytoin and we replace it with other non-inducer drug valproate. Then sudden increase in the levels of quetiapine may be seen. So when we are switching phenytoin to other anti-epileptics, we have to take this precaution. Divalproate sodium. Co-administration with quetiapine, it has increased the plasma concentration of quetiapine by 17%. It does not affect the extent of absorption or mean oral clearance, so overall drug adjustments may not be required. Ketoconazole is a strong P450 enzyme inhibitor, so co-administration reduced the oral clearance of quetiapine by 84%, and there was a significant increase in maximum plasma concentration of quetiapine. So dose reduction of quetiapine will be indicated or may be required. Other inhibitors of cytochrome P450 are itraconazole, fluconazole, erythromycin, and protease inhibitors. Fluoxetine, imipramine, haloperidol, and risperidone. Co-administration does not alter the steady state concentration of quetiapine, and dose adjustments are not required. Effect of quetiapine on other drugs. Lorazepam. The mean oral clearance of lorazepam was reduced by 20% in the presence of quetiapine. Dull valproates, there was no significant changes in mean concentrations, and dose adjustments are not required. In lithium, no effect on any of the steady state pharmacokinetic parameters, and dose adjustments were not required. Coming to important black box warnings. Increased mortality in elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis. Elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis treated with antipsychotic drugs are at increased risk of death. Quetiapine is not approved ideally for the treatment of patients with dementia-related psychosis. However, patients' relatives should be counseled appropriately when we have to give it. Coming to suicidal thoughts and behavior. Antidepressants increase the risk of suicidal thoughts and behavior in children, adolescents, and young adults in short-term studies. These studies did not show any increase in the risk of suicidal thoughts and behavior when they are used in patients with older than 24 years. The risk was high, especially in children, adolescents, and young adults. In patients of all ages, though, who are started on antidepressant therapy, monitor closely for clinical worsening and for emergence of any suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Advise families and caregiver for the need for close observation and communication with the prescriber. Quetiapine is not approved for use in pediatric patients younger than 10 years. Special considerations, geriatric high-risk medication, we have already gone through it. Coming to pregnancy category C drug. There is no adequate and well-controlled studies in pregnant women, and quetiapine should be used during pregnancy only if potential benefit justifies the potential risk to the fetus. Nursing mother's animal study, it is excreted in the breast milk, and according to FDA drug information, it is recommended that women receiving quetiapine should not breastfeed. Coming to certain clinical studies, the material available for quetiapine is very sparse as far as this ischemic strokes or other adverse events are concerned, though some studies have been performed, the risk of ischemic stroke associated with the use of antipsychotic drugs in elderly patients. This was a Korean study in which it was seen that a substantial higher risk was observed with chlorpromazine and haloperidol, followed by quetiapine and olanzapine. So the incidence of ischemic stroke was higher in chlorpromazine and haloperidol population. That is a conventional antipsychotics as compared to those on quetiapine and risperidone among atypical antipsychotics. One study was done for low-dose quetiapine for drug-induced dyskinesias. If the dopamine blocking action can control drug-induced dyskinesias in Parkinson's disease, it was a double-blind crossover study. The results were during the double-blind phase, no significant changes in dyskinesias were found with either 25 mg of quetiapine or placebo. Duration of off states and UPDRS scores also remain unchanged. However, on 50 mg per day dose of quetiapine, a slight reduction in dyskinesias had occurred in some scales. But off period was not significantly increased, and this improvement was not strongly reflected in patients' overall impression of treatment effect. So overall, there was no significant benefit from quetiapine for the treatment of dyskinesias. There was an interesting Australian study which put concerns about quetiapine because quetiapine has proven safety and efficacy when used for its approved indications. However, there were certain concerns about off-label prescribing for indications with limited evidences like insomnia and all or generalized anxiety disorder. And adverse outcomes are more likely in already vulnerable populations such as older people or those with mental health problems and substance misusers. So prescribers should therefore be very cautious when they are considering a prescription for quetiapine when they are considering off-label indications. So this was the last slide. Thank you. So I'd like to summarize that it's an atypical antipsychotic. It has got several benefits over the typical antipsychotics in view of neuroleptic malignant syndrome, lesser amount of extrapyramidal syndrome side effects. But we should record few things like baseline complete blood count levels, LFTs, renal function test, serum electrolytes, baseline ECG monitoring, and patients' underlying cardiac status, cardiovascular risks, underlying diabetes status. And especially these atypical antipsychotics have more metabolic syndrome risks as compared to that of typical antipsychotics. And black box warning should be kept in mind before prescribing this drug. So with this, I conclude my presentation. I'm open for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sonu. It was a very nice presentation. You have extensively covered all the aspects of it. This is what I wanted to bring
Thank you.
across.
Yes.
We are using it off-label for many situations, including post-stroke psychiatric manifestations, epilepsy, right, and dementias also. We are using it low doses. We don't go to 400 mg, but low doses we will use.
Yes, sir.
And we should be aware of all the potential problems, including falls, hypertension, orthostatic hypertension, increased risk of cardiovascular, cerebrovascular mortality. Very, very important. Let us see if any questions come up.
Yes.
Before that, regarding the QT interval, I just want to make a small correction. You have shown that the interval between onset of Q and end of Q, that is an absolute QT interval.
Yes.
So what we are interested in is corrected QTC, that is obtained by dividing QT interval by the RR interval. Square root of RR interval, not RR interval. So QT divided by square root of RR gives the corrected QT. Usually the computer calculates that. So that is the QTC.
Yes, sir.
Slight difference QT.
Yes, sir.
The other thing is dementia-related psychosis and anxiety is a real blackout warning. So now a new drug called pimavanserin is available in India. That's a serotonin 2 agonist, so antagonist. So that is the most specific therapy for drug-related dementia-related psychosis. So
okay, sir.
Quetiapine and other drugs are not approved for this indication for dementia. Yes, pimavanserin is approved. That is available in India also. I'm not sure how psychiatric clinics are using it or not. It was never used. Same way in Parkinsonism related psychosis also, that is the approved, not quetiapine or other antipsychotics. The approved is carbamazepine. Yeah, and Lewy body dementia also mentioned that they are very sensitive to antipsychotics and they respond very well to donepezil. Psychiatric mental patients respond very well to donepezil. So that should be tried before going for antipsychotics. These are 2 points I wanted to say. So let us see any other questions or comments.
Yes, sir. Yeah.